Now we're talking about expanding range of motion for hip extension. So running, walking, anything really, the ability to extend the hip without moving into the lower back is absolutely essential. We're going to set it up with some PAILs and rails from the FRC system. We're also going to be using these sticks. Is it better with the sticks? 100%. It's going to really help you direct tension not only through the ground but through your whole body. Do you need them? You could totally do it without them. She could be holding onto the pole behind me. You could hold onto your kitchen table, whatever it is. She could also even be holding onto nothing. The purpose of the exercise is not to be unbalanced, it's actually to expand range of motion. So holding onto nothing would definitely be your last option. So I almost would not suggest doing that. So from here, we have the poles. She's got them angled so that she can drive down into the ground and really use her armpits. So she has this here. From here, we're gonna spend 2 minutes just breathing. So while she's breathing, I want big deep breaths. I want the ribs to come down and in, and I want her to tuck her pelvis under her. So she's literally trying to take her pelvis and tuck it all the way under her. When she does that, what should happen is a little bit of almost rounding in the lower back, which is okay. Once you achieve that tucked position with the belly button pulling in, you should start feeling a stretch in the front of the right hip. So she should feel a little bit of the hip flexor, maybe some quad. Everybody's a little different. When we're talking about our foot positioning, this is great. The foot down is also an option. Specifically for you, I want what's going to feel the best. So if you need to change the positioning, that's fine. Best case scenario, I'd probably do both, even if it's on separate days. Next time, have your foot down. This time, have your foot up, whatever works. From here, the other thing that needs to happen as we're breathing is we need to square our pelvis. So we don't want the back hip to start to turn out. We actually want it to stay in and forward. When she's there, we're nice and tight, nice and tall. As we're coming into this, we're trying to solidify our positioning. So I also want her to start thinking about getting a big chest. So the spine extends up top while the bottom part of it stays locked in. Now we're going to go into our first contraction, which is your PAILs. So I want her to start driving the poles into the ground. I want her to start squeezing her abs. I want her to create tension through everything in her body except for her jaw. Now she's thinking about directing all that force and tension towards the front of her right hip. The function of that right hip right now is trying to pull the knee up. It cannot because the ground's there. So she's continually feeling more tension in that right hip. We just ramped up 10 seconds. She's somewhere at 100 right now. If you can get to 100, get there. We're holding at 100 for 10 seconds. If you can hold longer than 10 seconds, you're not at 100. It's okay. You'll learn how to build tension better and better. Now we're going to relax that tension, and she's going to try to tuck her butt harder. As she's doing this, she's using that right glute especially. She's tucking harder. She should feel the stretch increasing as if it's opening the front of the hip. The entire time this left hamstring's working because her left foot is pulling back, and we're tucking harder and harder every single second. We did that for 10 seconds. Relax, sink into it, just breathe. Now we're getting our regular breathing back, in for 4, out for 8. Sinking in. There is tissue that's holding you back. So whatever you feel excess tension in, I want you to fully exhale for 8 seconds and think about it's melting, it's relaxing, it's sinking in. If you have any knee pain in the right side, put something under you so you have a little bit more cushion, a pillow, something like that. Just make sure it doesn't offset the hips. We just did 1 round. We're going to go into our next round. So she's going to start creating tension everywhere. As she creates her tension, she's going to direct it towards the front of the right hip. You should feel the right hip acting as if it's going to do this. It cannot go because the ground's there, so it's not able to move. It's an isometric. Keep ramping. We're going to get all the way up to 100% if you feel safe. Ease into it if you need to. From there, we release that tension. She tries to tuck even harder, squeezing her right butt cheek, opening up the hip more and more. 5, 4, 3, 2, sinking in, just breathing. As she's here, again, full exhales, relieving whatever excess tension she has. We just spent 2 minutes passively breathing in the beginning. We did a PAILs contraction, 10 seconds ramping to 100, holding at 100 for 10. Then we did our rails, 10 seconds pulling us deeper, rested a few breaths in between, maintaining our position. Repeated the whole entire thing as far as PAILs, rails. Now we're on that final rest, sinking in, owning it. The whole process is somewhere between 4 to 5 minutes. You can start with one round. You can start with just the PAILs. Take it easy. Everybody's at different levels. Do what's comfortable. Should be no pain at all. Great. Okay, so this is going to be your progression for hip extension. We just did our PAILs and rails in our more standard lunge. So she basically had her hip directly over her knee. You can see we're in more hip extension now, so she's driving into it. Very, very important that she's not arching her lower back. You're gonna see a little bit of a natural curve here. It's not gonna be tucked under because we're in hip extension, but at no point is she arching her lower back. Okay, so just make sure you note that. You should not feel your lower back arched. You shouldn't really feel it working at all. What we're doing is we're taking stress off of the lower back by opening up the front of the hip. So from here, we're gonna start off with our 2 minutes of passive breathing, just owning this position, taking some big deep breaths. As she's in it, there's tension places that we wanna get rid of. So it's probably gonna be in the front of the hip. Maybe you feel a little bit in the abs, wherever it might be. Try your best to fully exhale for an 8 count and think about that stuff as relaxing and it's allowing you to just sink into this position further. After we did our 2 minutes, time to go into our PAILs contraction. Big deep breath in, exhale everything out. Get nice and tight in the abs. She's gonna start driving the poles into the ground. Everything is irradiating tension and it's directing it towards the front of her left hip. She's trying to take her left hip and push it and pull it towards the front of her as if she's flexing her hip. 10 seconds ramping to 100. Say we just did that. You're gonna hold at 100 for 10 seconds. Work your way into it. From there, we just did 20 seconds. Now she's gonna go ahead and relax that and now try to tuck her butt harder. So she's using everything in the backside, her butt, everything's squeezing. The whole time this foot is active, this hamstring is pulling back and it's allowing stability. 3, 2, 1, stay here and breathe. Big deep breath, sinking in. We're gonna repeat that for another round, but in between, it's important that you breathe, take at least 3 to 5 breaths where you sink in, get rid of some of that excess tension. You might have noticed that your pelvis started to turn out to the side, so make sure it's nice and square forward. One more exhale, sniff air in, get tight. We're gonna go pushing with that front left hip, driving towards the mirror this way. As she does that, we're ramping up tension. Say we just got to 100. Relax that tension. Now squeeze this butt cheek and tuck your pelvis more under you. You should feel the stretch increase in the front of the left hip as you do your rails. 3, 2, just breathe, sink in, big deep breaths. We just worked super hard to get here. It's definitely time to sink into it, relax into it. Use your breath. Spend at least 10 breaths here, maybe 5 at the bare minimum, but try to really get at least a minute, a solid time of you relaxing into this new range of motion that you just created and really own it by calming yourself down. That's gonna be your progression for hip extension number 2. All right, good job.